Recently, you may have seen two of our latest toy videos. One was a retrospective of the Hasbro 2008 Indiana Jones line, and the other was a review of the new Playmobil Starship Enterprise. In both cases, I received messages after those videos were posted asking me why I didn't talk about price. Now, this is something I've gotten a lot over the last 10 years on YouTube when I make videos of both vintage and modern stuff. I get messages from people asking me, why didn't you talk about the price of that item, or why didn't you talk about the value of those vintage toys on the market today? And the reasons for that are rather multifaceted. But first, I want to clarify something. There are times where I talk about price, and I've talked about price several times on this channel. But normally, admittedly, it's because of a very specific set of circumstances, and I don't do it often. Most of the time, it has to do with the price being an additional roadblock or an additional baffling element of something that a toy company is presently doing. So for example, when I talked about the Bespin Bridge to Nowhere announcement, that stupid little half play set of the freeze chamber from Hasbro Pulse, I was shocked that not only was it half a play set and they wanted you to buy two of them, but that those two combined were still an unsatisfying experience and would have cost the consumer $100. In that case, I felt like the price point added to the relevance of the topic, and also the price itself was a relevant discussion point. Similarly, when we're talking about a crowdfunding model from one of the biggest toy companies, I feel like price is also a pertinent thing to discuss, because if you're cutting out the middleman by doing this, which is what those crowdfunding models do, then price shouldn't be so egregious. And yet it feels like, from my perspective, they're using that as an opportunity to gouge the consumer. And so I cite the price. I've often said that if a toy comes out, and I said it about the sail barge, if the sail barge had been put out at retail, I would have bought one. And that's regardless of the price. I would have bought one if it had been on shelves, but I don't like this crowdfunding thing. In those instances, I have discussed price. If I was to do a video about, say, the Super 7 5 points of articulation G.I. Joe figures that cost something like $17.99, I would be talking about price, because that is a ridiculous price for the product that they're offering. It is mercenary in how inflated it is. Most of the time, though, the people who've sent me these messages over the years are correct. I don't talk about price. It's not something that I think about very often. And there are multiple reasons for this. The primary reason is because if I'm doing a video about vintage toys, talking about the secondhand value of a vintage toy or toy line instantly makes that video irrelevant, because the values on the secondhand market are so fluid with vintage toys. Most of the time, they continue to rise. So for example, when I did the Wheeled Warriors video several years ago, if I had ended it with a value statement about the current monetary value of those toys, I would have said something to the effect of, and they're fun to collect because they're relatively affordable and you can get the whole collection pretty easily. That does not apply now. Now they have risen in price in the last 7 years. They are very expensive. And so it would render that video tone deaf. There's no need to do that when you're putting in hours of production time and editing time on a video to hobble it that way. There are also cases in which things are valuable one moment and then they collapse. My buddy Matt at Reclaimers Vintage Toys has told me there are actually 80s toy lines within the last year to year and a half that spiked and then went back down to their normal values. These things can't really be predicted very easily. And so it's never been a good idea to saddle my videos with a price point like that. In the vintage space especially, because of the value of an item is so fluid. However, now in the modern space, that's really the case as well. There was this running argument for a long time that I collect modern, not me, but a person I'd be talking to, collects modern because vintage is too expensive. Well, those price points have narrowed significantly, and now modern toys are just as hard to find, currently on pegs just as hard to find, and they're nearly as expensive unit per unit. So when they're in stores for about 3 months and then they cycle out, most modern toys from Mattel, Hasbro, even Playmates with their Ninja Turtle stuff, they instantly go up about 15, 20, 25% in value just because they're not in stores anymore, regardless of how popular they were when they were there, peg warmer or not. So I tend not to talk about value there either, or price, because it's too dynamic. But the second reason that I think I don't talk about price is far more fundamental to my point of view on things. This channel is fueled by my point of view. It's fueled by my approach to toys or pop culture or this piece of entertainment or whatever it is, and the way I analyze it. Most of the people watching this video right now are probably toy collectors on some level, because that's part of the community that we're all in, the toy collecting community. Regardless of your personal caveats with toy collecting and whether you collect mint on card or you collect loose, every single one of us has been at that point where we have stretched our wallets to get that thing we really wanted. And that's vintage or modern. Every one of us has done it, except for the rarefied few who sit on their hands and they wait for that magic deal. And more power to you if you can get those deals. I think it's great when you do, and I salute your patience. A lot of us, though, we hold on to that idea that is worth the price regardless, because I'm so excited about what that character is, or what that vehicle is, or what that playset is, or just what this toy represents even existing. I'll pay a few extra bucks to get it. And when I say extra, I don't mean necessarily secondhand value. Sometimes I've seen modern stuff that I think is probably a little overpriced, but I know that this is, something that I've really wanted, some character or some version of a character. And I go, yeah, I want that. My point in saying that is, that means that price doesn't really factor in if you're talking about an item or an experience that you want to have regardless of the sticker price. There are people out there whose tastes are one way and whose tastes are another. So price in the eye of the beholder, there's somebody out there who's never going to pay $250 for a rare Ninja Turtles figure, but they'll pay $450 for a rarer Star Wars vintage action figure. Or these days, it doesn't even have to be a rare one. It can just be a vintage Star Wars action figure from the main line. Some of them are going for like $450 carded or whatever. And then vice versa. There's somebody out there that doesn't give a crap about vintage Star Wars, but they'll pay $250 for the vintage Ninja Turtles figure. Price becomes so relative. I don't really see a point in talking about it when the item is of quality, or the item is exciting, or the item is historically relevant, because there's so much more to focus on that has nothing to do with the price tag. One, because, like I've said many times already, price is dynamic. It goes up and down. It's fluid. You can't predict it. It dates your video. There's no point. But also because intrinsically, I feel that talking about a product like that Starship Enterprise, many people will say the price is too high. But me, as a lifelong Trek fan who always wanted a ship that could fit the figures inside, I was excited by that from minute one. I wanted to have that right away. I wanted to support Playmobil and what they were trying to do. They put it out there without a crowdfunder. They put it out there, without, pre-orders or anything like that, really. I mean, it was a pre-order in the sense that they were already being manufactured, and, you could kind of pre-order one with Amazon or Big Bad or Entertainment Earth or whatever. But it wasn't like you were trying to reserve a spot, is what I'm saying. And so in that respect, it fit all these markers for me. And I was like, yeah, the price of it doesn't matter. What matters to me is that it's being sold in what I feel is an ethical fashion. And it's something that I've always wanted to see from a toy company. So then I get the thing and I start making the video, and I just don't focus on price. Prices are easy to look up. You go to eBay for vintage stuff, you sort by, or stuff that's no longer in stores. You sort by highest price, and then you look for sold completed listings, and then you form an average. That's what you do. You form an average. Beyond that, there's not really there's not really a point to talking about price in a video that's supposed to be talking about what makes a toy cool, what makes a toy interesting, you know, what questions does it generate, what do I want to say about it. Price never factors in. I know there are some toy channels out there that are trying to make toys speculative. They're talking about when to liquidate certain collections and lines and when to buy into them, and I just think that's folly. It's not relevant to the broader discussion. Yes, we should be talking about the broader industry. We should be talking about how Hasbro and a lot of these other companies continue to price hike. And then in the case of Hasbro, for example, they, you know, across the board say, well, we can't sell in Russia anymore. And that's why we're passing on the cost to the consumer, which is a very tone-deaf, ugly reason for making an excuse for anything. So yeah, if you're talking about a company's pricing across the board, across all of its lines and how it's treating price increases, yes, price becomes a pertinent part of the discussion. But if we're just talking about one toy or a series of vintage toys or something like that in a retrospective, or even a singular toy review of a modern toy, price to me is very irrelevant because one person's going to be willing to pay and see a certain price as reasonable versus another person who isn't willing to pay that because they see it as unreasonable. And it has to do with franchise interests and personal tastes and all that stuff. So I just don't like dating my videos that way. And I'd rather just, you know, talk about the object itself. Because if you love it enough and you see it and you want it, you're going to get it. All right. So that's why RetroBlasting quite often doesn't talk about price. We have and do, but you're right, we don't do it often. So I'm going to get back to working on Star Wars Follies 19, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.